When he was in 7th grade, Dean was madly in love with his girlfriend whose dad was a local tour pilot. One day after school, they were walking to the buses when Dean looked up and saw a plane with smoke. It was around Christmas time, so he assumed that it would say something like, "I love you." Instead it said, "We're through, Dean. I never want to see you again." Everyone saw it, and Dean ran to his bus crying. He went straight to the back of the bus and continued to cry during the hour-long bus ride. Ooh, that's rough.
One time, Kyle was in gym class playing a version of musical chairs that had hula hoops instead of chairs. Everything was going great until he fell over trying to get into a hoop. When he got up, he threw the hoop in frustration and hit his teacher right in the nose. Instead of laughing it off, Miss McFadden went completely psychotic. She slapped Kyle across the face and screamed,
"Don't you dare do that to me, you miserable piece of crap! If you do it again, I will choke you!"
Kyle burst into tears and ran out of the room. She slapped him so hard that Kyle bled. Kyle was suspended for a week, but Miss McFadden had it much worse. She was fired for acting unprofessionally towards a student, and she was arrested for child abuse. I guess emotions run high when people play musical chairs, or at least kids.
When Salty Squid was 7, he came home from school one day and found that his mom, brother, and sister were not there. Just then, he began to hear noises in the basement and got scared. He grabbed an airsoft gun and went downstairs. As soon as he got to the last step, his babysitter, brother, and sister jumped out and scared him. Startled, Salty Squid shot his babysitter, who got furious. While screaming at him, the babysitter grabbed him by the ear and dragged him upstairs. She took his airsoft gun and she shot him with it. His brother and sister told her to stop, and she did, but said, "You two were right. I should stop with the airsoft gun. I have a better idea." That was when she gave Salty Squid a water bottle and told him to drink some. He did, but then his babysitter grabbed his nose and squeezed more water down his throat. He couldn't breathe, and she took away the water bottle. When she did, he threw up everywhere while his babysitter and sister laughed. He grabbed a knife and yelled,
"Get the hell out!"
She said, "I wouldn't do that if I were you," then tackled him. As she grabbed the knife and threw it across the room, his mom came home. The babysitter began to fake cry and lied by saying Salty Squid attacked her with a knife and that she was restraining him. His mom wasn't buying it and took the babysitter outside to yell at her. His mom told her to never talk to her kids and step foot on their property again. Salty Squid later learned that she was arrested and served 6 years in jail.
I wasn't a particularly religious young person. Occasionally a family member or someone might try and get us to go to Sunday school. I remember one time at the end of Sunday school, after we'd made the cross out of all the matchsticks or whatever, there was a little bit where people prayed for other people who needed it. So after all these people got prayers and things, someone asked me who I'd like to have everyone pray for. And I was feeling a bit left out at this point, I didn't really get on with all the other people because of the whole religion thing. So I just wanted some me time. I told everyone that I was going in for knee surgery that weekend because I had a bit of a funny looking knee. Osgood Schlatters disease, if you're interested. So I sat through the weird process of having a room full of young people pray for me for a thing that wasn't real. I don't think anyone ever found out, although probably the adults could have guessed. That was a bit of a dodgy thing to do, wasn't it?
In 6th grade, M. Kyle M's science teacher bragged that he used to be a professional gymnast, and since he would also occasionally teach the gym class, he would do backflips in front of the class to prove it. Now one day, he decided to do a backflip inside the science classroom for some reason. He didn't have enough room to complete the landing though, and his leg slammed into a counter full of chemicals, spilling them everywhere. The whole school needed to be evacuated because they were worried some of the fumes were toxic. It happened on the second to the last day of school, and it was M. Kyle M's last year there, so he had no idea if the teacher was fired.
Gergag dreamt that his sister was frying chickpeas one by one in a pan. It was starting to piss him off because she could obviously fry them all at the same time. This led to an argument where they were screaming at each other, which went on for a couple of minutes. Eventually, Gergag realized that he had woken up and had been screaming across the room at nobody. His boyfriend got a rude awakening and was scared senseless.
When Slapjam was 19, he was working at a grocery store when a woman approached him with a gallon of ice cream. She called Slapjam a pig, and said that the ice cream that he sold her was making her son sick. She claimed that her son only ate ice cream 4 times a day. Slapped Ham told the woman that it's very unhealthy to eat that much ice cream every day, but instead of listening, she screamed that it had milk in it, and so clearly ice cream is good for you. He sighed and gave her a refund for the ice cream, but she wasn't satisfied and reported him to the manager. The manager told her she was stupid and banned her from the store. She deserved that.
Tulip had started a new job and hadn't made any friends yet. One afternoon during his shift, he really needed to pee, so he ducked into the men's room. No one was around, so, as he stepped up to the urinal, he started singing the old Batman theme song. Only his version went,
Na 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 pissing, pissing, pissing.
Just as he finished, Tulip heard a door open and saw one of his new coworkers coming out of a cubicle. Luckily, the guy didn't make a big deal about it. He said,
Hey, we all do weird things when we're alone.
It turned out to be a pretty good icebreaker.
One day, Hellbent was walking home from school when a black and green striped van came speeding up to him. It had a big marijuana leaf on the side of it with a message, "Don't vote, just tote." The van braked right next to Hellbent, and the driver rolled down the window. A woman in her 50s popped her head out and shouted, "Hey kid, ever seen the cocaine fairy?" Hellbent shook his head and the woman shouted, "Neither have I. Wait, I am the cocaine fairy." She then started throwing bags of flour at Hellbent, which exploded on the ground around him. The cocaine fairy then sped off, cackling while driving on the wrong side of the road. It was very confusing and cringy.
When Doopy worked at a Subway, a customer ran face first into the glass door. He hit it so hard that he broke his nose and fell straight on his butt, all in front of a big crowd of people. I guess he really wanted a meatball sub. The man was getting lunch with his co-workers, and Doopy overheard his boss say that he was getting drug tested as soon as they got back to work. I guess he won't be getting that promotion.
When Mimi was in high school, she saw a kid got in trouble in the library. He was harassing some kids who were reading manga. Mimi ended up overhearing one of the librarians yell at him and ask why he was giving the kids a hard time for reading it. With a smug look on his face, he said, "Ladies hate anything Japanese, so I may get a girlfriend this way." Needless to say, that excuse didn't fly with the faculty, and he got detention. He still kept that smug look on his face, believing he would get a girlfriend even as Mimi walked away.
Once when Doopy was younger, she went on a school field trip to an arcade with her parents as chaperones. While at the arcade, she tripped and fell on some vomit. Her parents picked her up and yelled, "She threw up! She threw up! Move out of the way! She's gonna explode!" Doopy hated it, and for the rest of the year, people called her the throw-up girl.
When Spinal Palm was a sophomore in high school, his English class was preparing for mock job interviews. The teacher was describing the proper way to shake someone's hand and kept saying, "In, pump 3 times, and out." Another teacher then popped his head into the classroom and said,
"Stop describing my college life."
The whole class lost it. One day at Walmart, Ursa saw a man and a woman arguing with each other. The woman was screaming things like, "I always get this kind," and "Why don't you go kill yourself?" She poked her head around the corner and saw what they were fighting over and had to walk away because she started laughing so hard. The woman was fighting with the guy over a 12-pack of toilet paper. Eventually, employees had to kick her out of the store, and they said she was banned from ever coming back again.
On her first day of her new office job, Froggy had to use the bathroom but didn't know where it was. So, she accidentally walked in on her boss having sex with one of her coworkers. She tried to run away but ended up slipping and falling on the floor, opening the door to her boss's office even more. At that moment, almost everyone in the office saw. They began laughing, not just at their boss, but at Froggy. At lunch, she had spilled some applesauce on herself and had a brownie in her back pocket. It looked as though she had pissed and shit herself.
Back when Doopy was a deli manager, she had a very well-known NASCAR driver at the counter. He placed an order for 4 pounds of all-beef salami. The next customer came up, looking like he was about to explode. He said, "I was going to order some all-beef salami, but you gave the last of it to him! So I guess I'll take the most expensive meat you have, and you can charge me for salami." She responded by saying,
I apologize. However, I have no control over how much someone buys, and I can't determine how much of a product we should order in advance. Perhaps there's something else I can interest you in?
In response, the customer dropped his pants and took a dump on the floor, right in front of the counter. He was escorted out of the building quickly and charged with public indecency.
Gooby and her sister Snoopy worked at Burger King. Snoopy worked the counter while Gooby worked the drive-thru. One night, a man came in and demanded a coffee and a bagel. When Snoopy rang up the order, the man got furious because he said that he gave her a coupon for everything to be free. Snoopy looked around but didn't see a coupon anywhere. She told him that he never gave her a coupon and would have to pay. The man stomped to the dining area and smashed a chair against the floor, demanding his free meal. He then pulled out a beer and chugged it. That was when Gooby rushed to the front and told the man to calm down while Snoopy called the police. He continued to scream and throw things around, even splashing Gooby with some of his beer. When the police arrived, the man bit Gooby's arm and spat in her face. After the ordeal, their supervisor let them go home for the night.
When my brother was 8 years old, his friends found some military backpacks by a pond. They thought this was the greatest thing that had ever happened and emptied out all the contents onto the curb. My brother was a bit nervous about this. From a safe distance, he saw a lot of live heavy machine gun ammo and a bag full of smaller caliber ammo. He was happy to let them play with this stuff, until he saw one of them pull some homemade hand grenades out. When they asked him to come play with them, my brother quickly said,
I have to go to the bathroom.
Once he lost sight of them, he started running home to tell our dad. He and a couple of neighbors soon came to investigate, and the police came and told them the stash they'd found was actually terrorist-made weapons. It was super lucky they found it, as they were most likely preventing a serious tragedy.
When Zirigamba was about 8, his grandmother took him to the local Trees for Mystery. He really wanted his grandpa to come as well, but his poor little mind just couldn't wrap itself around the idea that he wasn't coming. After the tour, they went to the gift shop. Zirigamba then saw somebody who looked vaguely similar to his grandpa out of the corner of his eye. The next moment, he was hugging a complete stranger and yelling, "Grandpa, you came!" He looked up, saw it wasn't his grandpa, and he walked back to his grandma with his face red as a beet.
Pandora was babysitting her 3 cousins, with the youngest one about 3. They were playing with her My Little Pony toys when out of nowhere, Pandora's youngest cousin screamed,
"Ah, you hit me in my scrotum."
Pandora just looked at her and started laughing her ass off. Her little cousin just looked at her, clearly wondering what she was laughing at.
When Sacred Snoopy was 15, this guy, probably around 40 years old, got on the train in a Superman suit. Cape, foam muscles, tights, the whole 9 yards. He then sits next to Snoopy and opens his backpack, which is filled to the brim with nothing but oranges. She shoots him a very quick and disgusted glance. This prompts him to start bawling, and then, in a sort of a payback, he rubbed one of his oranges on her shoulder furiously. It was awful. It was kind of weird, and it scared her to death.
Emoji used to think that Canadians were a mythical race of goblins that gave out sweets to people, and that they were the kindest creatures of all. This was likely because of the stereotype that all Canadians are kind. Of course, that doesn't really explain why he thought this until he was 10 years old.
Tulip was in 8th grade and was on the way to use the restroom. It was the day before election, and everybody was going crazy about the 2016 presidential candidates. So, when he walked into the hall and was just about to enter the restroom, Tulip saw a student in a Donald Trump mask. And if that wasn't weird enough, he slowly moved his head to look at Tulip and then ran off with his arms behind his back like Naruto and continued to stare at Tulip the entire time as he ran away. Kyle M was at a thing called the Junior Classical League. It basically was where future classics majors hung out to learn more about Latin and Greek. At roll call time, each school had a theme. Kyle M's school had a rave party theme, and some other themes included the Bee Movie and the Avengers, stuff like that. One school's roll call consisted of a heated political debate between Julius Caesar and Donald Trump. At the end of the roll call, someone dressed up as Brutus ran out of nowhere and stabbed Caesar, prompting him to gasp, "Et tu, Brute," before collapsing. And then Trump winked at Brutus and handed him a wad of cash. Nice. One day, Hellbent and his brother were watching anime when their babysitter came over. She brought over some cosplays of anime characters from Yaoi and made Hellbent and his brother put them on. Then, she forced them to make out in front of her. When their mother came home, Hellbent and his brother told her what happened, but she didn't believe them. The next day, their babysitter came back and forced them to wear the cosplays and make out again. This time, their mother came home and saw what was going on. She yelled at their babysitter and fired her. Hellbent and his brother ended up burning those cosplays. Hellbent really wanted to impress his crush, and so he decided to use his love for extreme sports to do it. One day, he convinced a local pub owner to let him put a huge message way up on the pub's roof. He bought himself a wingsuit and a GoPro, and he hiked up these tall mountains that were near the pub. When he reached the top of the mountain, he took off and flew over to the town. From up there, he was able to film his secret rooftop message. "Wanna go out, Laura?" And he sent the tape to his crush.
Last year, Nixium's friend needed a place to stay as her family was out of town. He offered to let her stay at his house for a week. Over the next week, she kept shoving her fancy new laptop in Nixium's face, saying, "Shane, you can't afford one!" in the most arrogant tone he had ever heard. Nixium was extremely poor at the time. She kept making relentless jokes about how poor he was until one day he grabbed her bag, threw it outside into the rain, and chucked her out after it. She started yelling at him, but he just replied, "I might be poor, but you're homeless." He never spoke to her again.
During his senior year of high school, Mikhailum had a crush on a nice nerdy girl after a common friend introduced them. He tried to build up the courage to ask her out and tell her how he really felt about her. He bought her a rose and chocolates for Valentine's Day to tell her how he really felt. Come Valentine's Day, she ran up to him and told him that she loved him. Before she could say anything else, Mikhailum hugged her and told her that he did too, and then tried to kiss her. She slapped him and said it was a joke before she ran off. He hasn't seen or heard from her since.
One time when Gogak and Melon were at a Walmart checking out new Nintendo games, Melon grabbed a book from the shelf nearby. She flipped the picture of Dark Pit from Super Smash for Wii U, pretending to read it before shoving it in Gogak's face and giving him a big hug and kiss. Some random guy from behind them shouted from halfway down the aisle, "Your kids are disgusting! Go get a freaking life!" So Melon found the Pikachu page, jumped over the counter, shoved it in his face, said, "Pika, Pika, motherfucker!" and kicked him straight in the balls. The guy fell over crying, kicking the shelves and spinning in circles.
When Ladybot was in school, there were rumors going around that she vaped. She had no idea where the rumors started, but everyone started looking at her differently. Her crush eventually heard the rumor and asked her if it was true. She went along with it, hoping it wouldn't make her seem badass because she was so young. But unfortunately, her crush's best friend found it hilarious and decided to bully her every day until she graduated. It broke the ice though, and she managed to get a kiss from her crush, but it ended when she told him the truth, and he left her for another vape-smoking girl.
A few years ago, Doopy was selling plush dolls at her first anime convention. She was dressed as Maka from Soul Eater because one of the English voice actors from the show was there. Doopy had to go to the bathroom, but she forgot that she was wearing platform boots like Maka, which she wasn't used to yet. When Doopy got up from the table, she tripped over a wastebasket next to the table. She hit the ground hard, right in front of the voice actor. And the worst part, he just kind of stood there, staring at her while she picked herself up off the floor. Didn't even offer to help. What a jerk.
When Emoji was about to leave his primary school, the principal became meaner and unfair. He made a rule that the students couldn't say anything to censor out a swear word like fork or shoot. Emoji thought this was a bit unfair, so he went and talked to the principal.
We should be allowed to say fork if we get hurt, not if we talk about sex,
Emoji said. Almost everyone in his school year level agreed with him. The principal said that it was a stupid idea, so Emoji said,
"Go fork yourself,"
and left the office. To this day, he's still proud of that. Emoji was working in a pet store once when 3 kids burst into the store and ran straight to the puppies. Without asking, they opened the cage and all the puppies ran for their lives. The kids were chasing them all around the store. Emoji managed to catch them, and the poor dogs were shaking like they had been hunted by wild predators. The mother yelled at Emoji for not doing his job. But luckily, the boss stepped in and told the mother to control her damn pesky kids. They were banned from the store after that. Andy had a friend who was obsessed with a certain YouTuber. Andy thought this obsession was getting out of hand, so decided to mess with her a bit. First, she downloaded a really good voice changer app, then tweaked her voice so it sounded like the perfect imitation of this YouTuber. She then called her friend and said,
Hi, I heard you're a fan of the YouTube channel Planet Doll. Just thought I'd give you a call to say thanks for watching.
Andy's friend flipped out. After chatting to her biggest hero for a few minutes, she couldn't contain her excitement and said, "Here's my address. Please come and have sex with me." Then she gave her actual, real address. It's now years later, and Andy still hasn't told her friend it was all a prank. It's too awkward for her. Her friend still thinks it was real, and she still talks about the time she almost met her favorite YouTuber.
Once he got to 5th grade, Pringle decided that he was going to get a girlfriend. But he didn't really like any girls except for one, but he was too scared to just ask her out. He knew she really liked puppies, so he decided to make her one out of fabric since he knew how to sew fairly well. Pringle stuffed it with little beads instead of cotton, and sewed it together and added a heart. With Valentine's Day coming up, he decided that would be the day to give it to her. When Pringle got to school, he took it out and gave it to her. She called Pringle ugly, and then opened the puppy with her scissors, spilling thousands of little beads everywhere. Pringle found out later that she had a type of autism that made her react strangely when she gets surprised or overwhelmed. Pringle spent the rest of the day cleaning it up.
When Pringle was in school, he had a huge crush on a girl who was a few years older than him. He mustered up the courage to ask her out for Valentine's Day, and she said yes. He spent the next few weeks working his butt off to earn money for their big date. Valentine's Day came around and he met his crush at the movies with a $50 teddy bear and a box of chocolates. The movie went well, and they decided to check out a bookstore afterwards. Next thing Pringle knew, a guy walked over to his date and they started passionately making out. She introduced Pringle to her boyfriend and then walked out with him. Pretty harsh.